Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back for another week here on 1029 The Game and the Coastal Sports Network. It was humble pie time around my house. And to talk about it, we bring in Kevin Midgette as always. And some of my friends and family were happy we had Ray Dittinger on. And they said, how are you going to pick the Chiefs with Eagles Hall of Fame writer on there, Ray Dittinger? So, it was I wouldn't even say it was a great Super Bowl, but boy, I see Kevin wearing his green. For guys like you, how great was it?
I went
Oh, he's
old
wearing Seth
school.
Man too. He's
Old
wearing
school.
Seth Man.
Yeah. It was unbelievable, to be honest. It was one of those things you're watching it, and it's like, are they really just, boat racing them right now? And it's like, yes, they are. Once Sirianni went for it on fourth down on the first drive, it's like, and they didn't get it. It was like, all right, here it comes right now. Nick just made the bad call. But it actually probably was the right call. If you're going to go for it early. But to watch what they did on that field, oh man, as a football fan in general, that is an Eagle fan also. That was a great game to watch.
It, they just mantled them. It's 24-0, and I have friends and family say, don't jinx it, don't jinx it. And of course Brady's on the telecast talking about, I came back against the Falcons, a similar situation. And with everybody in my house, like, shut up, man. You're not. This game is over. And I wanted to get your take in terms of when did you think the game was over? I thought probably the Cooper DeJean pick six was such a huge play. The Eagles get the pressure on Mahomes. He throws it. it I'm not saying it was a great pick. He threw it to him, and then he took it to the house. So, talk about that play and any of the other plays that you thought early on that were big in this game.
The Cooper DeJean pick, that was athleticism at its finest right there. I mean, if he picks that ball and runs up the middle, he gets hit by an offensive lineman. What was it? Once again, maybe it's the punt returner him as well. He banged it to the outside. He wanted to get away from everyone and get some space, and that's what he did. That was great recognition after the interception. I knew the game was over, or I should say, I was very confident it was over. Was when Devonte Smith pulls in that touchdown. That was it right there. Because even the announcer is, Brady doing what Brady does, and it's like, oh, they're going to just run the ball to Saquon, because they realized that was just eating clock. They weren't getting yards; they were eating clock. No, Jalen goes deep, hits Devonte Smith. That was ball game.
Yeah, that was a huge play, and you know I've been listening to all the shows and everything today, and everybody is. It is a big story that Mahomes played so badly, but I think the Eagles had a lot to do with it. Particularly, Fangio had a game plan. I think he saw something on film in terms of Joe Thuney, who's a great guard, but they put him at left tackle and he struggled mightily. I mean, you saw Sweat making plays. Uh, Milton Williams, up and down that defensive line. They were getting so much pressure on Mahomes. The type of pressure that you saw Tampa Bay Buccaneers did when they beat him in the Super Bowl. So, you know, Mahomes sacked six times, kind of running for his life. Um, do you think there was any adjustments that could be had in terms of that offensive line, or is it just like this was the Eagles' night? And that's the way I feel. They were getting some get off. You even had Brandon Graham. He comes out there, and we knew he'd have that apparatus on his elbow. He looked good. He wasn't just out ceremonial playing in the game. He was getting some heat, and they were just beating up Mahomes.
They had no chance. The Fangio didn't even have to blitz. I think they did some garbage time blitz at the end. He ran with the front four, and they were getting that kind of penetration on Mahomes. They knew where he was stepping up. They collapsed in the middle, and that's where they were getting him most of the time. And then even when he did get outside the pocket, he doubled back to the middle, and he got sacked again. It was unbelievable the pressure they had on Patrick Mahomes. I've never seen him get hit like that since the Buccaneers game.
Yeah, and they showed him, walking off the field, and then in the tunnel later on, you saw him kind of hobbling, getting on a golf cart, and he was beat up, man. And uh, just harassed over and over again. Mahomes 21 to 32, 257, but a lot of that was in garbage time. Two interceptions. We talked about the DeJean pick six. That was huge. Yeah, he had three TDs, but much like the yardage, a lot of that came when the game was out of hand. So, he kept fighting to the end, but it just was a miss. And the Eagles had their number. It was the Eagles' day, and it wasn't like in 2017 where you're kind of like, oh, okay, it was close. You're, head scratches. This was just total domination, and you know, one of my favorite emailers, Byron. I talked to him today, and he was like, I told you, I'm telling you all year how dominant the Eagles were. And he said the Chiefs were actually a team that were kind of, all season hanging on by a thread, and the Eagles kind of exposed them.
There was definitely a lot of things, and we've talked about it all season long with the Kansas City Chiefs. The Houdini acts, the winning games when they shouldn't have won games, and Travis Kelsey he aged about 40 years within a 6 month span,
Yeah.
and it was yeah, they were. The thing is, though, think about it. They were still the best team in their conference. The Ravens didn't come out of there. The Bills didn't. The Bengals didn't.
Right.
The Steelers didn't. And so we need to give them a little respect. It's not like the Eagles just beat up on the Jacksonville Jaguars. They beat the best team in that conference.
Yes, they did. And they came out there, and early on, you could see that it was no fear. And I watched a lot of boxing growing up, and you always would see upsets or the underdog coming through, and they just fought. They fought the fight, and that's what the Eagles really did in this game. They didn't blink. I thought a big play early on, and a lot of people talking about um, Jalen Hurts threw that interception to Cook, and it was just like, oh, okay, what's going on here, and then we can also talk about the infamous penalty, the offensive pass interference in that first drive, and everybody's like, oh, here come the refs. I heard from all the friends and family saying, we knew it, we knew it, we knew it, but the Eagles just said, okay, who cares?
Yeah.
We're the better team. We're gonna beat the snot out of you. And that's what they did, man.
Yeah, they went basically, Lloyd. They went out there. They took their lunch money from them. They punched him in the mouth early. They're going for it on a fourth down, first drive. All right, was it a ticky tack, penalty called? Yes,
Yeah.
but once again, did the Eagles get one back when the Goddard one? Most definitely, they did. And the one thing I will say about Brady, he loves calling out the refs. He's like, no, that's a bad call. No, that's a bad call. I'll give him credit on that. But the Eagles showed no fear this entire game. They went for it the whole time. Like, even with the Devontae Smith touchdown, if you were being prudent, you would just run the ball and try to run clock. No, let's throw it deep. Let's put this one away. It was like to remember the Titans kind of thing. It was just like leave no doubt. It's like
Yeah.
just go out there.
Oh yeah. Run the score up, yo. Leave no doubt. And that's what they did. That's what they did, man. It was, they just kept coming in waves, and it was just like, okay, the Eagles believe, and this was their night. And the Chiefs, their credit, Spagnuolo decided he was not going to let Saquon beat him. Saquon ran the ball when he had to, but they were tackling well. He was not bringing off those big runs, but um, the Eagles just found other ways to beat him. And we talked about with Ray last week, and we got to touch on it. And this was the Legacy Bowl, and there were two guys that I called out. Well, there was three. I mean, one kind of we'll go over that one last, but there were three guys I kind of called out, and I was like, okay, let's see if they can cement their legacy. Um, Jalen Hurts, MVP of this game, very efficient, 17 to 23, 221. He did have that pick that I talked about that didn't really factor anything. He had two touchdowns, 11 rushes, 72 yards for one TD. And I feel like he was vindicated in terms of the national media and people, is he top 10? Is he this? Is he that? And we talked about with Ray last week, the guy's a winner, and he showed his leadership in this game.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. Jalen came out, and the one thing we've talked about Jalen in previous shows is the fact like his demeanor, how he handles things. That's a sexy, attractive thing. It's not the best soundbite the way he handles himself, but Jalen, nothing bothers him. He literally is listening to this whole city, national media included, for the past since they went to the Super Bowl last time. Can he do this? Can he do that? And he just showed up and did it, man. He punched the clock. He won the Super Bowl, and the best picture I saw was him smoking a cigar, sitting down with the Lombardi Trophy between his legs. That was cool. I appreciated that for that man.
Yeah, it was vindication, and I see you wearing an old school jersey there. It reminded me of Chuck Bednarik, when he's standing over Taylor. This bleeping game's over. Franklin Field and win the championship, and that's what it was. I mean, it was his signature moment. Never gets too high, never gets too low. And yes, a lot of people, that stoicism is kind of like, okay, is this real? But it is real. I mean, he's a guy. He's a true professional, and he's the leader of this team. Yes, Saquon was the engine for a lot of this season, but Jalen Hurts was a leader this season, and he made the big passes when he needed to. That touchdown that you referenced earlier to Smith, that was a great throw. I can't wait to see the NFL films on that. There's going to be like that
Yeah.
spiral, that moment. I don't know if they
The
still do
teardrop.
The America's game. That'll be one of the
Yeah.
plays they show in America's game when they talk about this game. So, uh, great throw by him. We're here talking about the Eagles Super Bowl 59 victory here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 102.9 The Game, Coastal Sports Network. So glad everybody can join me. I'm here with Kevin Midgette. He's got his jersey on. Uh, we'll keep talking about the guys we called up. Nick Sirianni. That was another guy. I said, all right, this is his legacy. This is his opportunity. A lot of people still thought he was kind of, I'm not going to say a buffoon, but he may not have been the guy that, how's he getting it done? But he gets it done. Now he's a Super Bowl winning head coach.
We I'm not saying we, you and I, but we as a fan base slash media slash just people that enjoy football, you can't bash Sirianni anymore. He's bought 3 years of grace. You can't. He won a Super Bowl. He's been the two. You can't do it anymore. Jalen Hurts, you can't do it with him either. I mean, there's certain guys. This was a big game for them in their careers, and Nick Sirianni is a Super Bowl winning coach, and give him his flowers. Just do it. It's like it was a great job by Nick. He let his coordinators coordinate, and they got the job done.
Yeah, he did a great job in terms of getting staying out the way, and his all week the motto of the team was "Let's hunt," and that's what they did. They were hunting, man. They were hitting Mahomes early and often. They were hitting the receivers. Kelsey, you talked about him. He looked like he wanted no parts of this game at a certain point. He was like, and I really think he's going to retire. I think he's going to say, what, enough's enough. And he had difficulty getting open in this game, and you know, talk a little bit about how they took Kelsey and all these guys out of their rhythm. And what you thought there?
Well, the first thing about Travis Kelsey yesterday, the best thing he did was the outfit he put on
Oh,
going to the
terrible.
Super Bowl. I loved it.
You
I
loved
thought it
it.
was great. I was like, man, I can't pull that look off. It looks good on you. That being said, when he put his football uniform on, it was a different story. There was a drop pass, and Mahomes missed him another time, and it was like they weren't in sync at all. And we talked about, I think, last week when Ray was there. It was like Kelsey, like Gronk in that Tampa Bay Super Bowl when that they beat Kansas City. It's like the big guys show up for the big games. He was not even on the field. You wouldn't even
Yeah,
think till the back end of the second half, and he got some garbage catches. I agree with you. I think Travis Kelsey's done.
yeah. I think he retires, and ironically, Gray vultured him again. Gray gets the touchdown in his Super Bowl, and Kelsey, great career, but in the end, you just see that father time's kind of catching up to him. 35 years old. Nate and I were talking today, kind of debating. Okay, do you think he comes back? Then, and I just think enough's enough. You're dating Taylor Swift. She's a billionaire. uh, it was funny because one of the prop bets Nate was talking about was the over under for Taylor Swift showing on screen was 7, and it was way under. I think it came in at like 2, and
Oh
you
yeah.
know it's like, okay, that story kind of passed. Do you think, in terms of, everybody talked all week, and I thought some of the questions were a little ticky tack, in terms of Patrick Mahomes, are like, so how's it feel when the refs give you advantage and all this stuff? I thought the refs kind of didn't get involved. I'm looking at the numbers now. Kansas City 7 for 75. Eagles 8 for 59. I think a lot of the Eagles though were false starts on a long snap. How many times they call that? It, what were they? Yeah, it was like, come on, man.
My whole thing is, good thing Jake Elliott was having a good day. Because even when they backed him up, it's like, all right, I can still hit this. Like, Jake Elliott's even laughing at one point. He's like, all right, just keep backing it up. Yeah. Uh, I was worried on the first drive when they called the passer, the non-call or whatever I should say, the AJ Brown, I should say, push off with the face mask, and Brady saying no, it's not, and then with the Goddard one, and then it was a Saquon Barkley too after the play where Spagnuolo was like losing his stuff. You know, I'm like, are the refs going to get involved with the outcome of this? But they seem to lay back a little bit, so they let the game play. I mean, you got to remember though, it's the refs have a lot of adrenaline going as well, so sometimes the play comes out when it shouldn't.
And they're human beings, and it was good that they didn't really get involved. When I saw it was Torbert, that was the referee. I said, "Uh oh, get ready for some holding penalties," because that's what
Mhm.
they call all the time. They kind of just let the guys play, and particularly the Eagles' defensive line, they were just bringing the heat, man. There was just no way of stopping them. Particularly, they lined them on Thuney. You saw everybody just eating. I mean, I didn't see Huff though. I think Huff was inactive for the game. Now it's funny. I was looking at the roster. Now you got to say Bryce Huff, James Bradbury, Super Bowl champions. They get a ring. I guess they get a ring just like all the practice squad guys. But what an incredible win for the Eagles. And talking about legacies, you talk about Jake Elliott. I kept saying he's going to blow it. I say he's going to miss a extra point and a field goal, and he drilled kick after kick, 4 for 4. I don't think he had a kick a 50-yarder, but he did make like a 48, 49-yard kick. The first kick, I'm not going to lie to you, the first kick was kind of waning towards the post, and I said, "Uh oh, here we go." But he got that in there, and he seemed to kind of get his confidence.
And that's all it takes sometimes. It's like even in basketball, that first shot goes down. It's like, all right, I'm okay now. It's like you just need to clear the mechanism a little bit. Yeah, I mean, the thing is though, do they bring Jake back next year? I think they do. I think Jake Elliott has a job again because he's a two-time winning kicker in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and they stuck with him, and it's much like there just was retirement. The Green Bay Packers kicker Mason Crosby, he finally retired, and they stuck with him through thick and thin. I remember Vinatieri kind of at the end with the Colts, they stuck with him too because he was a Super Bowl winning kicker, and you know kicking's it's just tough. They got one job to do, but when they're bad, they go really bad. Particularly, kind of down there where you are, that Justin Tucker. What are the Ravens going to do with him?
Try to let the legal process play itself out.
Oh
I'm
yeah, besides that.
assuming.
Oh,
So, and they might the legal process might make it easier on this conversation with Justin Tucker for the Baltimore Ravens.
yeah, I forgot about that. Oh boy, you think you would have learned from Watson? That's all
Hmm.
alleged, of course, people.
Allegedly, yeah.
We'll let that play out. And uh, speaking of, there was other new like Aaron Rodgers. The Jets did what we thought they were going to do. They said, "Oh, we're going to step away from him." They're bringing Aaron Glenn in there, uh, a new general manager as well, and yeah, they don't want him. So, does he get another job? Does he come back? I think he says, what, enough's enough. At 30, at 41, he kind of walks away.
I hope he has people in his camp that say, we can't, if anything, you've hurt your legacy at this point. Why continue it? It's just like an old fighter that wants to keep fighting. It's like, you know what? I think it's done, champ. I think you're done. So hopefully he has the right people in his corner to tell him to step away.
Yeah, particularly Amir. He likes, he listens only to Aaron.
Yeah.
That's his favorite person. So, but he does need to take a long, hard look and just say, what, enough's enough, and kind of move on from there. Speaking of legacy, in terms of the Eagles, Howie Roseman, a guy I've kind of questioned in the past. Everybody always says he took Rieger over Jefferson. Well, he built a roster. He didn't need to do much. Sirianni didn't need to do much. This roster was loaded. Now, first, what do you think about Howie and his effort, and then talk about how he's going to be able to kind of keep the band together? Particularly, I think Mackay Becton, um, Vaughn, and Milton Williams are all free agents. There's a couple other key guys too as well.
I mean, I've been flip flopping on the Eagles all year. This is for like I think even going to the Rams game, I'm like, no, they're not going to win. They're done. That kind of thing. And I'm wearing Kelly Green today, so what do I know? But that being said, I think I called Howie out to be put back in the basement, like somewhere in October. So once again, my bad, Howie. My bad. Nice work by you. Howie's unbelievable. He is the reason this team is where it is right now. The way he's structured it and everything else, with the guys with free agency. I mean, the question you have to ask yourself: Bond, do they pay money to a linebacker? And I said last week they never have before. Why should they now? Because that's not what they do. Should they do it? Absolutely. That interception he made, the trajectory of that ball with two hands to pull that one in, that was great hands right there. That was athleticism again, like Cooper DeJean's interception.
Yeah.
And then with Milton Williams now, and also with Beck, I mean, which one would you rather keep if you're an Eagle? You know, because do you let Josh Sweat leave at some point? I mean,
Yeah.
someone has got to play defensive end.
Yeah, and Sweat made a lot of money. Nate was saying to me, he's a free agent. And I said, yeah, he made a lot of money. He was getting a lot of hits, and I could see him going to a team, like Jacksonville or somewhere where that needs a pass rusher, and they're willing to pay him. But now that always begs to say, okay, was he a byproduct of the Eagles system, and he's got all these other guys playing with him, etc. I still remember, you're wearing that Kelly Green. It makes me think of Clyde Simmons. I mean, I think Clyde, after he left Reggie, where did he go, to Bears?
Arizona.
Arizona, yeah, that's right, Arizona. And you're like, ooh, he did okay, but it just was not. He was not the same guy, and that's going to happen when you win a Super Bowl. You're going to have defections, you're going to have injuries, and that's what you got to kind of see leaning into next season. Obviously, all our friends and family are all, we're coming back next year. It's time for our three-peat. you know?
Mhm.
So, they're feeling good, and you expect them to. I mean, this was their day. I mean, it was just incredible. I just thought all along, the Chiefs' pedigree would kind of jump forward, but the Eagles just said no, 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 and they just kept smacking them around. It was just like, okay, they'll make it. Even at 24-0, I knew there was no adjustments that were going to save the game, but I said, all right, maybe they'll come out this first drive, and the Chiefs will kind of do something. Andy will yell at them in the locker room, but they came out and punted. And that was the thing. I'm looking at the numbers, and there were a couple times in the game, Kansas City punted 6 times in this game. And there were a couple times like, all right, they may be in their own end or whatever, but there needed to be that urgency. And did Andy look like the old Andy? You know how Ray and I talked last week about he had changed from the guy we had covered so many years in
Mhm.
Philly, and the master of the clock and the adjustments. He didn't do any of that. I mean, he just kind of staring ahead. I don't know if it was Matt Nagy, the offensive coordinator, but they just had no line sight adjustments, nothing. They just kept trying to, drive the football down the field, and Mahomes didn't have enough time.
It was amazing how little they ran the ball. It's like, all right, the pass isn't working. They're getting him at homes. They're hitting him. It's like at least throw the timing of the Eagles' defensive line off. Run the ball a little more. He just had Mahomes keep dropping back over and over again. And yeah, it was definitely Philadelphia Andy out there.
Yeah, and I thought the same thing. And when they ran it at you're like, they needed to be running a hurry up offense, and now he's trying to run it with Pacheco. And you're like,
Yeah.
no, what are you doing? So the Chiefs, to show you the numbers, 11 rushes for only 49 yards in this game. So they just could not establish it. And I think, as we move into talking about both teams and how they move into the offseason here in Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game and the Coastal Sports Network. As the Chiefs move into next season, Brett Veach, who's their general manager, Andy Reid, they got to rebuild up front. Chris Jones got beat up. and their defensive line didn't seem to have a lot of heat. They did sack Hurts twice, but it just never seemed like they were getting that consistent pressure like the Eagles were. And then their offensive line, uh, they changed that. They moved Thuney out late in the season, and it seemed to work against Buffalo. But the Eagles just had his number. So talk about how the Chiefs move forward going into this offseason.
I mean, I think the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. They can Mahomes with a good offensive line can beat most teams. His offensive line against a dominant defensive line, he wasn't going to win that game. And they said with Thuney, I think it was Booger McFarland actually. I'll give him credit for it. Was saying it's like you take your guard, you move him to your tackle spot. It's good for a game or two. But when you move him to your tackle spot full time, now you've weakened yourself at two spots.
Right.
Now you have a guy who's not used to playing tackle, and you saw him get pushed into Mahomes numerous times yesterday. And then you weaken your guard spot as well. And Kansas City was just playing catch up, I think, on that offensive line all season.
Yeah, and in terms of Thuney moving out there, it's different footwork. It's so I've talked to left tackles over the year, and then they got to get that post, they got to get that kick step. And to his credit, he is an All Pro guy, and he did a nice job as Booger, and you were saying for 1 week. But the Eagles had 2 weeks to prepare for this, and definitely they must have saw something on the film. Fangio must have, because they just kept coming in waves. They were running. It wasn't even they were running twists or stunts or anything. As you said, it was just natural for pressure.
Yeah.
And he had Jalen Carter in mix in the middle. I wanted to see that matchup with Creed Humphrey and Smith, and he was just dominating them in there, pushing the pocket, and then the outside guys are cleaning it up. Mahomes was kind of rolling out, and he was getting hit right away. So great job by the Eagles in terms of game plan, execution. When you look at the Eagles, how can they stay at the mountaintop? What on a roster needs to be changed? And the crazy thing is, we talked about Howie Roseman and his flowers earlier. He's done very well in these last couple drafts. I mean, these guys are young. DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, they're young at a lot of positions.
I think the Eagles will go as far as Saquon Barkley's health takes them. I mean, he's not going to be this Saquon again. I mean, that was a phenomenal season that he had. But we all have seen running backs, like really get really old in one season. So as long as Saquon is healthy and is, 75% of what he was this year, the Eagles got a chance. If they run everything back for the most part, they're in the mix.
Yeah, and Nate was saying to me earlier, he said, "Is this the greatest season a running back has ever had?" And I had to really think about that in terms of, production, and then they win the title, and it's only happened with Terrell Davis in like '98, and then Emmitt Smith, and when Dallas went back to back. I mean, they were carrying the team, and that's the way Saquon was playing. I don't know if you saw a lot of the post game. He was shotgunning beers. I mean,
Oh yeah.
talk about Saquon and just the change in disposition, and you could see his whole life arc, career arc change, leaving the Giants. I would have loved to seen Mara and Joe Shane, them watching that game. They probably broke their TVs or something like that.
Mhm.
But just talk about Saquon Barkley, and I know you talked about uh, possibly, they got to make sure his carries, but just talk about the effect that he had on this Eagles team.
I think with after the folding after the 10-1 start from the season before, it was a breath of fresh air. It was some new blood, some new energy, and especially somebody of that dynamic MVP slash All Star caliber. It's a little more credibility when he comes in and he's acting the way he is. He's doing the work and everything else, and it gets everyone else to etch a sketch your mind and like recharge his battery. And I think he was great for the club this way, and it carried over. I mean, you saw many times there were like he was, they wanted to break the yards record in the game, and he's like, "No, let everyone else eat." It's like he was always a team first type guy. So you knew when he wasn't getting his yards yesterday, he was super supportive in the background. I mean, he was there behind them when they dumped the Gatorade on Nick, and he was jumping up and down more than anybody. So Saquon Barkley, it was a great fit for this team.
Yeah, and he had a big catch. it was almost like a juggling catch, like kind of like the one he dropped against Falcons. But man, he pulled that ball in, and that was a big catch early on. Helped get the Eagles down to the goal line and the area and where they could make their mark. And just they had contributors all over the place. I thought it was kind of ironic. He didn't get the prop bet, but he almost had the first touchdown. Jahan Dotson, like who had that on their bingo card? But
Oh,
they wiped it off. Obviously, I think everybody did have the other one. Jalen Hurts touchdown, tush push. But Dotson, I was like, man, that probably was a big payout in terms if he had scored that touchdown. So thought that was interesting. I heard you may have had you know Lady Luck on your side, a couple shekels. All my friends, my Nate's been he bragged about, and we'll talk about this in a minute. Um, he had Josh Allen. He bet for MVP. He hit on that. So how'd you do? How'd you in terms of the day?
I did pretty well. I'm pretty well. Of course, the IRS does not listen to this show. I'm hoping, but no, I did well. The funny thing is, I've noticed. Bets aside, I only win block pools when the Eagles win Super Bowls. I won the first quarter of the Patriots Super Bowl because Jake Elliott missed the extra point, and I won the third quarter of this
Oh
Super Bowl
boy.
this year because Kansas City decided to go for two, and I had six, and they didn't get it. I was like, all right, I win again. So when I win a block pool, the Eagles win Super Bowls. Just note it. Certain things, you just make bets during the week because they give you these boosts and different things. So this week I'm just claiming stuff. One of them I had the first touchdown to be scored by somebody with a uniform number of 15.5 or under. So when Dotson got in, I was like,
God.
no. And then they got on the one. I'm like, oh, that's Jalen Hurts right there. That's a one.
Oh my
All right. So
lordy.
I got that. I got some other stupid stuff. I did have the Eagles winning by 9.5 and also the over. But I didn't get my full cash out because my dog decided to keep using the bathroom in the fourth quarter. And if you can cash out when they offer you money, so my dog decides he has to pee or poop all the game during the fourth quarter. Keep taking him out, taking him out. I cashed out on the under. I didn't know Kansas City was going to hang two touchdowns on the back end. I saw the Eagles getting the ball and just taking a knee, but I blamed $50 on my dog. But yeah, I had a good day.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, and there's just so many things you bet on. Now, it was interesting. The national anthem. He stretched it out at the end there. The land, the land, the land, and I heard he went right over. I think it was 2 minutes was the over under, and then I was like, oh man, I wonder if he told a buddy, put some
Uh-huh.
cake on this. I'll make sure I stretch it out, and we'll all get a payday. It's crazy.
Mhm.
It was tails. The Chiefs won the toss, and I always say tails never fails, and but yeah, winning the toss really didn't matter. They deferred, and they think, okay, the same game plan as 2022. We'll go in the locker room, make adjustments, we'll get the ball, but they did not get that score they needed before halftime to kind of do that 2-for-1, and you could just see they were just discombobulated. It was crazy. And speaking of uh, pools, this is a good set. My wife, we went to one, and she won the block. She's not even a football fan, you know what I mean? She kind of there watching the game, and she wins the pool, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, yeah." She's getting the money, and she goes, "Oh, it's for an organization. It's for a charity or something." She gave half of it back, and I'm like, "What are you doing?"
No,
I'm like, "What
no.
are you doing?" She said, "Well, this is for the kids and stuff." I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "You win the block pool at the Super Bowl. You keep that money." So I was just like,
Mhm.
"Oh man, just funny stuff." But it's America's holiday, and it's interesting because um, people are calling out all over the place. Not showing up and all that. Do you think they should? Nate's talking about they may make it into an 18 game season and then have it stretch out where President's Day would fall after the Super Bowl.
I don't know
You think
why they
that's a
haven't
good
done it
idea?
already. Yeah, it's like the fact is they've been talking about this for the past few years. I know schools, the public schools where I live right now in Maryland, they didn't have school today. they scheduled some in-service day where the kids didn't even have to go to school, and it's like, yeah, President's Day the following week. It's like, all right, just put it together, all right, because there's no productivity that Monday. People are either using their sick days or calling out. Nobody's doing anything, so let's just call it a day on this.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of people, they are saying, don't. I'm not going to be here Monday.
Yeah.
you know, they were very confident. I was listening to the radio all week, and they were like, they knew their Eagles were going to get it done. Um, in terms of celebrations, I was telling my one buddy, I was like, "Oh, be careful out there." The young folks like. I heard a lot of gunfire where I live once they started with, they won. But I didn't hear anything too major. Uh, did you see anybody climbing light posts or anything, or keeping that Philly identity? People say,
My whole thing is, you talk to people, you're on the same text thread and everything else. You think you kind of know somebody, meet him a couple times. The one guy's outside and his kids are there. I didn't realize he had a cannon. He actually lit a cannon and pulled it when the Eagles
a
won.
cannon.
It was like a mini one, but still,
Oh
I'm like,
my goodness.
it's like you're about to lose a foot for the first time since 1883. It's like, get rid of that thing. I saw this stuff in the city. What makes you say, hey, my team won a Super Bowl? Let's rip down all the traffic lights. They were
Oh,
just pulling traffic lights down left and right. And I'm like, what is going on here? It's like, I don't get it, man. But once again, I'm an old guy now.
I
So,
am.
all right.
I am. And
Yeah.
I'd rather be safe at home out there in the
Yeah.
madness. And I already, not, yeah, the parade is on Friday. Are you going to go up there? Are you going?
The funniest thing is, my wife and I, of course, we have our day off together today, so we go grocery shopping together, and every guy's the same look as me, and his face pushing the cart, like, oh God, let's end this. But I'm like, we're talking about it. I'm like, the Eagles parade's on Valentine's Day. She's like, is it really? I was like, so many arguments that day, so many couples either breaking up or staying together. If you really love me, you wouldn't go to the parade. That kind of stuff's happening.
I remember in 2008, I went to the Phillies parade. It was on
Mhm.
Halloween,
Yes.
and little Nathan was little. He was like 3 or 4, and then I got stuck in the city, and it's getting dark out, and all of us guys are on a platform, and we're all getting that text, that call, where are you? It's like
Mhm.
every guy was like, screw it, I'm out for the day, especially because I remember in '08 that, Philly hadn't had a championship since '83. So it was like since the Sixers. So it was like,
Oh,
man, I'm going to this. And a lot of people, that's the way they feel. I know in 2017 was kind of the same thing. My father, who's a season ticket holder, he's older, and I said, all right, I'll make sure I took him down there. Just it was, and that was the fun thing about it. You saw a lot of families out there, lifelong people, and you got to credit to them. That some people throwing a towel with their team. You know what I mean? They're like,
yeah, yeah.
I remember a lot of relatives. They said, "Oh, I'm tired of rooting for these bums." And it's tough because you think about like the Fog Bowl. You're like, "Oh my God, this is an act of God stop stopping this
Mhm.
team from winning." But the Eagles now, you know, it, I'm not going to say they're America's team, but they're up there. I mean, people, they have a national presence. I mean, they took over New Orleans. It was incredible. Uh, and people actually were rooting for them. I guess people, didn't want the evil dynasty to get the three-peat, and they kind of jumped on the Eagles bandwagon.
Yeah, as much as I hear about people hate on the Eagles about right around where I work, at the same time though, when the Eagles beat the Patriots, everyone was sick of the Patriots. They hated the Patriots in 2017, so they were happy when that happened. And then you have with Kansas City right now, nobody wanted to see the three-peat, so once again, everyone rooted for the Eagles, even though they dislike the Eagles. So it's like it depends on who you play, I assume.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people like Bradley Cooper, and he announces the team and all that. A lot of celebrities from Philadelphia. I got a kick out of watching Kevin Hart all week. He is insane in terms of his Eagles fandom, the videos that he was putting out, and it's just surreal. It's like, wow, okay. I thought it'd be a close game, but they just dominated him, and I talked about my friend Byron that I talked to earlier. He was like, we got this, and I thought, okay, this is a little homerdom, but man, they weren't kidding. I mean, this team
No.
just dominated them in every aspect, and you got to tip your cap, particularly to Jalen Hurts, that offensive line in particular, defensive line, and we always talk about the turnovers were huge. The turnovers, and the Eagles stayed the course. They got turnovers all during the playoffs. Think about the Green Bay game, the Rams game against Washington. They get four, and they did the same thing. You're like, they're not going to be able to do that against Patrick Mahomes. He's the guy, but they sure did. And speaking of Mahomes, the GOAT conversation. All these Brady people, and I think Brady was getting a little extra, he's like, yeah. You know what I mean? As Mahomes kind of was struggling, he's like, don't ever put our names together.
Mhm.
So what do you
Mhm.
think in terms of this? I think he's 29, 3-2 in Super Bowls. In the AFC, is it Burrow? Is it Allen? Who's going to really challenge them?
It's a year to year thing. That's the whole. It's like, does T. Higgins go back to Cincinnati? Probably not. So now all of a sudden you need a wide receiver in Cincinnati for Joe Burrow. Does Buffalo do anything to help, Josh Allen with his receivers as well? It's a weekly thing, but at the same time, it's like, it's impressive what Mahomes has done at this point in this juncture in his career. Can he continue to do it? That's the definition of legacy right there, and GOAT status, as I like to call it. It's Brady. There's no doubt it's Brady. I'm a secret Montana guy. 4-0 is 4-0. But at the same time, I'm a Jordan guy over a LeBron guy because he's 6-0. The perfection of it. But yeah, it all depends. But Mahomes, as long as if they can help him with that offensive line, he'll be there.
Yeah, yeah. And talking off the field, did you watch all right, where did you watch the game? We debated about this before. Do you go to a party, stay home? What happened in the midget household? I stayed home.
Oh, oh, Lloyd, I hate people. I've worked with the people. I've worked with the public now for about 30, 40 years of my life. I was at work yesterday. I got home. Yeah, I sat here. I watched the game. My wife even went to bed by the third quarter. She was like, after Kendrick Lamar, she went to, watch a little bit of the third quarter, went to bed. Just me, the dog, and two cats hanging out. But it was funny. We went out today, and she's wearing, like, she likes to gear up with her Eagles gear. I was like, people are going to ask you about the game. People are going to ask you about the game. So I'm trying to give her, like, little cliff notes before we get to the store. Sure enough, people are like, how'd you like the end of the game? It was good. I was like, no, I told you what to say. They got some trash points at the end. But yeah, I watch it at home, man. I want to be in the comfort of my home, my own comfortable clothes, and it was great to watch them celebrate and win.
Yeah, yeah, and you talk about the texts and the calls. They were, everybody found out. They posted all over the video of us and Ray. All it was on Facebook and all. So everybody was calling me and texting me, and our buddy Rich Quinones on his show, he was getting destroyed by folks because he's a Giants fan, and I think it's something about Philadelphia fans. They just when they win, they really want to stick that sword in your side, man. They really just want to rub it in. And for me, it was like, I told you, Lloyd, and you're Mr. Analyst. You look at all the stats, you study and all this stuff, and you were wrong. You should have just listened to me. Joe Ticket holder.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy. And speaking of Kendrick Lamar, Nathan, I should thank God he was there watching the game with me. He's 19, college. I said I might need subtitles. It was it was fun to watch and all that. Not my cup, favorite thing. So it was interesting to see Serena out there dancing and all that stuff. But then Nate had to explain to me all about the beef, between
Oh yeah,
Kendrick
oh yeah,
Lamar and Drake. I mean, are you familiar with all this stuff?
yeah, yeah. What are you, 102? Come on. Nah, nah. I'm all about the Drake and Kendrick Lamar. But then again, I work with young people too, so I
Oh, there
hear
you
all
go.
this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I said, oh, okay. I'm still, my wife and I, we still listen to 90s hip hop, when we
Oh,
do.
that's when it was good. Man, no, that's when it was good.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I thought it was okay. It was solid, It looked like most of the young people were having fun with it. It was funny. There was a clip online, and they showed like um, an older guy and a younger guy. It was like 35 and under. This is how they're look. They're getting it. They're dancing all around. And 35 and up, they're all like, "What's the deal with this?" How about the commercials? I wrote a couple down in my Twitter feed, and I was just kind of going over them. The Uber Eats one I thought was pretty good. I thought McConaughey and all that was pretty funny. There was a Doritos UFO one, and then there was I was like, man, you talking about oldie but a goodie, and you talking about under 35 minutes. I probably like, who the hell is this? The When Harry Met Sally, the
Yes.
mayonnaise commercial. I
Yeah.
thought that was good too. So,
Yeah.
any other ones?
Well, it's kind of funny because, as I mentioned before, my dog wanted to use the bathroom a lot in the fourth quarter. Well, he wanted to do it also right when the coin flip started. The dog slept for like 2 to 3 hours, and all of a sudden the coin flip, he wants to start going out. So I keep hitting pause, and my wife, she's watching her TikTok. She doesn't really care. She's like, "Why do you keep hitting pause?" I'm like, "I want to see the commercials. I want to see the commercials." And once again, we went out like 2, 3 different times, and I start fast forwarding through them. And she's like, "Why are you fast forwarding?" I'm like, if they're good, they'll show them again. I got to catch up to this game because my phone is
Yeah.
blown up with all these text messages and everything. The one commercial I did see, and I don't even know if they showed it during the game, was the Nick Foles Tom Brady one with the
Oh,
beef thing or whatever, and like he's like FaceTiming him, and Tom Brady's like, "My uncle played with you," and he's like, "Who's your uncle?" And it was Nick Foles. That was
that's
hilarious.
great.
Yeah, and he called him out for catching the pass he didn't, and Tom Brady's like, "You throw for 500 yards, and you lose. It's called luck and everything else." That was a great commercial.
Yeah, and Brady, they paid him to be the top analyst, to kick Olsen off, and he's got work to do, man. I almost there was a couple times I was like, all right, you're part owner of the Raiders now. Go own the team. Just stop. Too much of his commentating, and I know Romo does this, and some of the former players. He talked too much about himself, like when I was in this situation and all that kind of stuff. For my opinion, rather than being in the moment, and also then he talked. I noticed he was talking more about the Chiefs angle. Oh, they're losing, and this hurts, and I remember this. Well, talk about the greatness of the Eagles. The Eagles kicked their butt up and down the field, man. So how did you think Brady did, and is he worse than Collinsworth?
No, he's not worse than. No, actually, you know what? I like Collinsworth more. I will say that. I will like. I'll give Tom Brady credit for being at both Super Bowl victories by the Eagles. He got to see very good with that. Carson Wentz also got to see both Super Bowl wins by the Eagles. So let's give him a shout out as well.
Super Bowl champion. He has a ring from that year, And
Hmm.
all the Wentz people always say, "Well, he was almost MVP that year," and I said, "Well, he should have slid against the Rams." But I still believe in 2017 that it was Foles that had to get it done. I don't think Wentz would have won that title. I just don't. The magic was in the air that night.
I
Would
just
you
remember when Wentz gets hit and you see him going to the sideline and Foles comes in, they win the game. I've never seen a team so unhappy that they won. It was just like they thought the season was over at that point, you know? And I think most of Philadelphia did it as well.
Yeah, and that's you talk about season ebbs and flows, and you and I have done this show all season, and this has been a season of peaks and valleys. And question, it's just like wow with the Eagles, and you go back and we talked about that. They lose the Falcon game because Saquon bobbles the ball, and they're playing against the Saints. They almost lost that game too. It was close, and all the missed field goals this season by Elliott. He's 1 for 7 from 50 yards, and you have Sirianni fighting with the fans, and you know it,
Yeah.
it's just a crazy season. AJ Brown. We forgot about everybody. It was hugs and kisses now, but at a certain point, it looked like AJ Brown and Hurts were, they were getting in it with each other. So just about the roller coaster ride that this was, and I know that Ray's working on a new edition of the Eagles Encyclopedia, and a big portion they're going to have. Obviously, now that the Eagles have won, is going to be this season. So just talk about the season journey for the Eagles.
The one thing I have to say is after the 10-1 collapse the year before, you pretty much were sure when they were 2-2. It's like, oh, especially I remember the Tampa Bay game. How Tampa Bay just came out and
Oh
took it
yeah,
from them right from the beginning, and it was like, all right, this team isn't that good. They should have lost the New Orleans game. Saquon breaks off the big one, the home run, and they're back in it. I want to give credit, and I'm going to the glasses on this, so I'm
got it.
serious. The Carson Wentz trade that Howie, made happen, the picks that came from that, they used to pick Devontae Smith. They used the pick to get A.J. Brown. They drafted Jalen Carter and Cooper DeJean,
Oh,
all from the Carson Wentz trade.
uh,
Devontae
thank
Smith, A.J.
thank
Brown,
you. Was
Jalen
that the
Carter.
Colts? Right, the Colts took him.
Yep, yep. So I mean, to get those guys from that trade alone, I mean, Howie Roseman, he earned this one. This was his shining star right here. He put this together.
He did, and in a lot of years people question him, and they always remember Chip Kelly, as you said, putting him in the back office, and
Mhm.
most GMs would not have survived over the years. Some of the picks and things, that Andre Dillard and Danny Watkins, but this team was tremendous, and he built it in a variety of ways. Think about it; he had key free agents like Zach Bond. Yeah, I know Fangio was like, "This is the guy we got to kind of pinpoint." And next thing you know, he was an edge rusher, and they're making him their key middle linebacker. He had a great draft. All those Georgia guys, people questioning on, think about Nolan Smith. I mean, he was bringing a heat yesterday too, and bringing it violently. I mean, he was getting around the edge, and he was hitting people. So, yes, Howie did a great job in terms of building this roster, and the centerpiece, obviously, in free agency, you bring Saquon in, and you put him behind an offensive line. Sorry, Giants fans, that is going to make him great. And that's what they were. And the line, they came together. They were beat up going into this game. Dickerson was beat up, and then you had Jurgens as well, and they just kept moving forward. So, you know, just you run out of hyperbole after a while. We're just talking about the greatness of the effort, and it's going to be fun for all the fans on Friday. Hopefully they behave themselves, and we'll see if there's another Jason Kelsey moment where do you think maybe he'll show up with a mummer's outfit on again and start talking about how they were disrespected by everybody. uh, that was interesting because they asked Kelsey's wife, "Who are you rooting for?" She's from Lower Marion, I believe, and in the Philly suburbs, and she was like, "I'm not going to say," because obviously his brother was in the game, and you know, so is the parade going to be as big as 2017? Bigger? What do you think?
I think it's going to be almost like, all right, say in 2008, because you were at the Phillies parade. I was at the Phillies parade as well. It was the first one since 1983. I'm like, I might not ever be able to see one again in my entire lifetime because, the Eagles have never won one at that point. So I'm like, I go to the parade at '08, right? '08, everyone's very respectful. Everyone, like, once again, the Eagles in 2017, everyone's there. They were just appreciating the moment and everything else. Now, 2009, when the Phillies won the National League Championship to play the Yankees in the World Series, all the younger guys are getting the tickets from their family that just saw them win in '08. And what do? They start burning up the city, breaking windows left and right. So what's going on right now? The people aren't, it's not the ones from 2017. It's the ones from 2025 now that are going to be the problem. This is going
Yeah,
to be the pain. Yeah, this is the one where they start breaking stuff and things are going to go a little haywire. So yeah,
I,
I'm staying away from the parade.
my good friend, he's same age as me, and I said, "All right, well, go have a good time, be careful." And he texted me like, "What do you mean be careful?" I said, "You got to watch out for them young folks, man." you know, I think a lot of times they just want to be part of the show. And the big thing is they all have a camera now. You know what I mean? They got their
Hmm.
camera, and they're making their TikToks and all this. And so, but I think it'll be a great time out there. And you talk about legacy. I think it's a lot of it's families, and you bring out a lot of people got to celebrate with their kids or their mom and dad who may be getting up there in years, and people that kind of Hey, let's face it, the Eagles suffered a lot, for a lot of years. I mean, they were, I think their all time records like 666 on both sides. You know what I mean? So 666 wins, 666 losses. I still remember it. It was from New Orleans. I was young, but they played the Super Bowl against the Raiders and they lost that game. And I remember my father, he was just distraught, because that was their chance. But this Eagles team's different, man. They're young, they're hungry. Um, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it turns out in terms of going into next season. Uh, Wanted to get your take on Miles Garrett is kind of demanding a trade. What do you? I don't think he can demand all he wants. I mean, we just saw Tariq Hill. He was demanding, and then all of a sudden he goes, "Oh, I can't wait to be back with the Dolphins," because he knows he doesn't have the hammer.
Well, I think it was Tyreek as well. It's like, oh, the tax break is a little better in Florida. Let me stay in Florida. The tax break in Cleveland, Ohio is not the same. So Miles Garrett's like, get me out of here while I'm relatively young. The list of teams I saw that he wants to go to, two of them are in the same division. In the Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, or Baltimore is one of them, I believe. It's you're not going to get traded to one of those teams. It was Cincinnati and Baltimore. The other ones were Buffalo and Philadelphia. It's like if you're Cleveland, and even though Cleveland has to Cleveland, I don't see them trading him in that division.
Yeah, yeah, I don't either. And speaking of top end players, the they only put four people into the Hall of Fame right before the Super Bowl, and one of them was from your Kelly Green, Buddy Ryan Eagles, Eric Allen, silky smooth corner, number 21. I mean, he was shut down. I was explaining, the young guys, Nate right away was like, "Dad, who's this guy? Was he really that good?" I said, "Yes."
What?
I said he always was in the right spot. He was like a thinking man's corner. And the Eagles had him, and it was Ben Smith when he was healthy. I mean,
Ben Smith.
he was a great player. So yeah, it was good to see Eric Allen get in there. Sterling Sharp goes in, and now him and Shannon are only two brothers, and I think probably the Kelseys will get in later on. Possibly your favorite guys, the Mannings, they'll probably
Uh,
get into together. But that was good. And I'm trying to think, was what Antonio Gates, and I cannot remember the other name. The other name, but it was weird because it was only four.
oh, yeah, it was Sharp, Gates, Allen, and Allen.
Okay. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Jared Allen. Jared
yeah.
Allen, the pass rusher. Yeah, who played for a bunch of teams, mostly like Minnesota, Kansas City. He
Mhm.
was probably best there. But yeah, so it was only four guys, and then it started. People started debating whether you know should assistant coaches like a Fangio. He's been in a lifetime career. Should he have the opportunity to go in the Hall of Fame, or how do you distinguish that? Because they really don't put assistant coaches in there.
Nah, and I think it's somewhat of the way why some of these guys take head coaching jobs sometimes. It's not for the Hall of Fame or whatever, but it's like that's when you're going to get your most recognition. Like, I mean, if you're going to do it for someone who's just a coordinator, Jim Johnson for the Eagles,
Yeah.
that's a first ballot winger right there. You put him in. That guy just wanted to be a lifelong coordinator, didn't want to be a head coach. One quick thing I have to throw in, I always have to mention this with Eric Allen. In high school, once again, we used to go up to Westchester and everything else, and watch it, the pre spring training or training camp rather. And once again, I love mentioning the fact I'm in high school. I'm just trying to get Eric Allen's autograph, and he has his shoulder pads off. He's like, "You mind carrying these for me?" No, and I'm carrying them as he's doing an interview. My friends are watching me. He's like, "Is he carrying Eric Allen's shoulder pads?" I'm just smiling, like,
Wow.
"I'm just gonna keep walking with him. I don't know." So that was always cool that he grabbed him back before we got into the clubhouse. So I was hoping to get in the clubhouse.
Oh, he got a signature out of it or something.
Oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah.
I still remember going to. I remember go. We went to Westchester with our camp, and Tony Franklin snubbed me. My
No.
brother's like, "Go get his signature," and he's like, because that was when you could get close. Kevin, you could get pretty
Oh
close to their
yeah,
cars
oh
and
yeah.
stuff. So one of my buddies had his hand on his car. I think it was his Porsche. He goes, "Get your hand off my car!" He kind It was just funny. Tony Franklin. Yeah.
Oh yeah. We were. You could get right up to their car. I remember because the Eagles just acquired Ron Solt from the Colts.
Oh, Ron.
And Ron Salt was there. He was like a big time, offensive lineman at the time. And we're sitting there. Once again, we're in high school, and they're like, "Hey, meet us at such and such bar." And he looks at us, and he's like, "Where the hell's that?" And I was like, we were in high school. We don't know, but like we're next to his car, and he's asking us this stuff. You couldn't even get close to that stuff today.
No, you couldn't. You could get right there. Most of the teams now have training camp at their facilities, and
Mhm.
it's just not that homey feel. Uh, some great. I read a couple old books on the Buddy Ryan Eagles, and there were some great stories out of those times at Westchester. Like,
No.
yeah, they had their fun. I'll just put it that way.
Oh yeah.
And But yeah, here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 the AIM the Coast Sports Network, Kevin and I are wrapping up Super Bowl. Uh, they had awards week before the Super Bowl, and Nate was crowing because his guy Josh Allen won the consolation prize. That's what that's what everybody was saying. Yeah, you won the MVP. We'll go through the awards and you kind of say, all right, got it right, didn't get it right type of situation. We'll start with the big one, MVP. What do you think? Do you it was pretty close too. There were a lot of people in the Baltimore area that were not happy because I think Lamar Jackson may have been left off some ballots. And what do you think? Should have been Josh Allen.
Yeah, Josh Allen. This was his year to get it. Lamar has had he's won with worse years. To be honest, this is one of his better years. But the fact is, we've talked about before, like Oscars, like other sports with MVP trophies, Jokic with the NBA. They're not going to give it to you every year. It's like they weren't going to give this guy his third MVP already for a team that continues to fade in the playoffs. So yeah, this was Josh Allen's year. I think they got that right as far as that goes.
Yeah, and a guy now, if you see a Super Bowl, who probably should have been more in the MVP conversation and was left off some ballots, Saquon Barkley. I think that's a slam dunk in terms of the offensive player of the year.
Oh, no doubt about it, because we've talked about before as well. And the MVP is a quarterback award. So once again, who gets the offensive player of the year? The best player that played offense, and that's Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, and uh, I think the defensive player of the year, it wasn't. Oh, it was a corners. Patrick Surtain won it. And then you
Hmm.
start talking about a lot of the Eagles did not get votes. They're the number one defense. Jalen Carr didn't get a lot of votes. Zach Bond didn't. Did they get that right? I think that was an early ballot situation.
Yeah, It looks like they kind of phoned that one in, and like as far as the Eagles go, there are a lot of, even though they're known to people in the Mid Atlantic area nationally, they're not well known names until last night, and now people know about them.
Yeah, and the defensive rookie of the year was the Eagles' buddy Jared Verse, who opened his big mouth and he talked about bulletin board fodder. He wins it, and you start wondering those two corners. They didn't have big stats for the Eagles, in the regular season, but they did a great job in terms of learning on the job. Uh, Jared Verse, good choice for defensive rookie of the year.
Yeah, he was a beast all year. I have no problems with Jared Verse. And the thing is, he showed up in that Eagles game as well, the playoff game. I mean, he talked it and he walked it. So, yeah, I have no problems with him winning that one.
And then the Eagles' other buddy, and I don't think a lot of people have problems. Jaden Daniels takes home the offensive player of the year, the offensive rookie of the year.
Yeah, yeah, I think that was a slam dunk. There, it was going to be very hard to take that away from him. So, Jaden Daniels, once again, for the Eagles going into next year and the next 10 years, he's going to be a problem. Just note it.
Yeah, and Washington has to get better up front. They didn't do a good job protecting him. In terms of fantasy football, though, the guy, don't forget him. Brock Bowers was incredible. He came in second. I think he almost led the NFL in receptions, and as a rookie tight end, he was a great player. We'll see how that works out. Um, Pete Carroll going to be good or bad for Brock Bowers?
Probably be good actually because he has no other options. So Pete Carroll's like just keep feeding Bowers until we can get somebody in here. So yeah, I think he'll be all right there.
Yeah, and in terms of the Hall of Fame, I'm trying to think of that gangrene defense. You're wearing Seth's number there. Are there any other? They get Eric Allen in. is there anybody you think from that unit, you know, could get a sniff? They got Reggie White and they got Eric Allen in, but I just don't know if some of the other guys have the pedigree, or they may be the Hall of Very Good or Eagles Hall of Famers. I just wonder if any of those other guys would get in.
Seth would be the only one that would be close. Had a long career. He played well with Arizona and went to, I believe, Green Bay. I think he got a Super Bowl ring when
Yeah,
Reggie
Green
White
Bay or
won
Denver.
that.
He played for
Yeah, he got
Denver
a
and won
ring at
Super
the end.
Bowl. Green Bay and the other one.
Yeah,
So yeah, ring.
he caught a ring at the end, but Seth is the only one that would be remotely close. Eric Allen, I thought it took way too long for him to get in. I think he had the career before. You make him wait almost borderline 20 years to get in, which is a crime. So, I mean, other than that, though, that's about it, man. I mean, because you got like Clyde Simmons isn't going to get in, Mike Golick's not going to get in, Jerome, posthumously is not going to get in, Willie T, Byron Evans, those guys, no.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. You talk about all time greats. It's going to be interesting once they start factoring in, this team with retiring numbers. They're going to run out of
Yeah,
numbers. They
yeah.
it, it, it this unit has played very well. Uh, just a season for the ages, and once again, you got to tip your cap to the Eagles. It was unexpected. They went in there 1.5 point underdogs, and they're playing. You know, I said in Rich's show the other day, I said, um, Mahomes is like Thanos. He's inevitable. Well, guess what?
Hmm.
The Eagles were the Avengers, and they
Hmm.
they took them down. You know what I mean? Uh, Most nights, everybody would say, "Okay, you can't go wrong betting on Mahomes, Andy Reid. They've been there before." But it's Jalen Hurts, it's that defense, it's Nick Sirianni.
I'm not one to quote myself, but I will pat myself on the back from last week because I said the Eagles would win double digits, and I said 34-23. They won
Wow.
40-22. That's pretty close. That is a double digit, pretty close kind of call. So I just saw them winning by double digits. I didn't see Kansas City. I knew Kansas City couldn't blow them out. And I think the Eagles had a chance to get ahead of them early and put them down. And that's pretty much what happened.
And I thought, okay, it's just a situation where experience going to rule the day. But yeah, it was experience. They from 2022 they learned. The Eagles learned a lot from that loss, particularly Jalen Hurts, and they had a lot of hunger going into that game. They didn't buy into all the talk all week, and you know it was just everybody wanted Mahomes as a story. He's going to become the GOAT after this. Andy Reid's going to challenge Belichick, et cetera, all that. And the Eagles just stayed the course. They took care of business. And when me, I'm a big numbers guy. I mean, they just dominated every stat. In particularly, they held the ball for 30, almost 37 minutes in this game.
Yeah.
They just weren't giving it away, and they only punted twice, and they were just dominant. So, you tip your cap to them, and it's going to be interesting to see, can they keep it going into next season? Because as we were talking about earlier, the defections and everything, will they be able to re-sign Zach Vaughn? Um, I know we kind of touched on it earlier. I think he'll give them not a hometown discount, but I think he will want to stay here because he's just rejuvenated his career here.
I hope. I hope he does. Because we once again have talked about how much the Eagles don't like to pay linebackers and everything. They 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 got the guys there. I mean, if they lock up the right guys, they could have a nice little 5 year window right here. I'm not saying they're going to win a dynasty because I think it's been talked about. You need to win 3 titles to be a dynasty in a short period of time. They got the one. That was the hardest one. But can they be continually like in the conference championships? Of course. They just have to keep the right guys. And you saw when Baltimore. I always remember when Baltimore won the Super Bowl with Flacco. Flacco took the big bag. He took all the money, and everyone had to leave. And it's one of those things. You don't need one guy taking all the money. If there's enough money for everyone, you'll still be all right.
And Howie always was a cap wizard underneath Joe Banner, so he knows. They're in a pretty good cap situation, not like the Saints and some of these other teams. And we'll see how that plays out. Now, particularly speaking of the Saints, I wanted to get your take on this. And I thought this may be a distraction going into the game, but Kellen Moore is probably going to be named the Saints coach either later today, early tomorrow. Um, is that a big loss? And how do you think they will replace him?
Jalen Hurts is used to a different offensive coordinator every year anyway. You're not going to sit there and be like, Jalen's like, oh no, I've grown so attached. Oh wait, there's a new one coming in. No way. Uh, yeah, I mean, Kellen Moore, you can't begrudge the guy. He got his ring now. You know, it's like now it's time to get paid and see what I can do on the next level. Is that New Orleans job a bad job? Absolutely. Will he be fired in 2 years? Probably. But he's going to be financially secure the rest of his life. Then he can go back to being an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is maybe Frank Reich, a coach that got fired by Carolina, comes back to work with Sirianni. I mean, he was his mentor, and maybe he comes back to be the offense coordinator at this stage in his career. He probably doesn't. He's got that bad taste in his mouth from being a head coach of Carolina, getting fired after one season. So he may be a possible replacement. But as we said, the Eagles roster is just so young, and they're only going to do more in the draft, and it's going to be a fun team to kind of follow going forward the next couple of years, and maybe it will be a rivalry. Maybe Kansas City will come back, and these two will meet in another Super Bowl. So another great week on Lloyd Vance Insider Football here on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Network. Thanks for Kevin for joining me, and Angel doing a great job behind the glass. He had his Eagles jersey on. I know he was partying the streets, had to get up early this morning. He was at Tampa Joe's. I was watching online. They were getting a party on down there, and hopefully everybody behaves themselves on Friday at their parade here in Philly. And I will talk to you next week.